Let's go to Noel Cluhanna, Noel, and then Natasha will come to you after that. Okay.
Thank you, Minister, for your remarks. Noel Cluhanna from BDO and various ASEAN business councils. I have a particular question for you about some of President Jacobi's signature policies, which were the banning of the export of particular products, including palm oil at one stage, but more enduringly nickel, of which you have the largest reserves in the world. That seemed like a success in terms of the downstreaming effect, creating refining and manufacturing batteries in Indonesia, but maybe not a long-term strategy because batteries are increasingly made with lithium instead of nickel. So I'd love to get your thoughts on whether Indonesia will persist with that policy. Thank you.
Well, Indonesia is comply with many of this, and we are hoping that the market mechanism will solve our problem, which is not it's actually not happening. So sometimes you really need a little bit, what you call it, industrial policy, which is now becoming a fashion to many countries, talking about the industrial policy. I mean, the approach of the Indonesia is a combination between improving our business climate, and that's why we have this omnibus law on ease of doing business in Indonesia. We call it job creation, in which we simplify many of our regulatory policy in labor, environment, investment, as well as small, medium enterprises. All those things has been overhauled. What is the objective? Is actually for the investor come to Indonesia and feel that, oh, okay, this is a good place to do and make sense, and I understand the regulation, so I will invest in here. On the other hand, investors sometimes need to be convinced about, okay, we export quite a lot of, including the strategic mineral. And this is not just yesterday. It's been like 60 decades or even 70 decades since Indonesia independent. Sometime in my conversation with some of the big company, and I said, you promised to build the smelter in Indonesia. That promise back in 1990 and never delivered that. Why is that? Oh, because smelter is so expensive, Sri Mulyani. You need to know what you want. And why? Well, because this is so risky and need a lot of capital. But then why you open smelter in my neighboring country, although they don't have those raw material? What is the difference between Indonesia and our neighboring country? They cannot answer. So that means decision by business sometimes need to be nudge. You have this nudge, right? The book which is very popular. So this is the way that the Indonesia try to nudge this decision in order for us to be able to convince. But it is not just forcing that you have to invest in Indonesia and then you exploit them, but we provide you with the best investment climate, and now you have to invest in Indonesia. So it is like a win-win. And don't forget, as I mentioned earlier, with those kind of value added, which is now happening in almost all, not only the strategic mineral, but almost all mineral in Indonesia, it contributes to the stability of Indonesia economy. Indonesia economy is stable and continue growing high, it will provide benefit for the region and the world. So I think that is the good game. In a way that this is what we are doing now, that we recognize that a lot of value added of many of this industry in Indonesia should and could be done. Within the context of the electric vehicle, battery technology and so on, I think this is continue moving, and Indonesia watching very carefully as well as discussing with many parties in order for us to be able to position in the right policy and place for this kind of continued dynamic changing.
Natasha Chu now from HSBC, and after Natasha, Tasuki will come to you.
Thank you, Minister. Having myself lived in Indonesia during the 97-98 financial crisis, I appreciate that Indonesia's economic stability is hard won, and it's amazing to see that Indonesia is now on course to be the world's 4th largest economy within, I think it's 20 years. What are some of the main factors, do you think, that may impede that goal? And indeed, do you think it can be met sooner?
Well, I think the crisis is very changing Indonesia really a lot and fundamentally. It is not only in the form of the cost of this banking crisis, which may be among the most expensive bailout in the world. I think we are only compared with Argentina maybe, because it's almost 80% of our GDP in bailing out this banking system. But it was really a very deep fundamental crisis for the Indonesia. the crisis for the government, the trust is lacking or gone. The crisis in terms of the way we govern politically in Indonesia, and that's why we become, although Indonesia is actually a democratic system, we always have 5 years election. But then we say that it should be a real democracy, which is not going to be know who's going to win any election. In the past, we always know who's going to be the president even before the election. So I think that's, and then we have huge fundamentally change in terms of our legislation. As I mentioned earlier, even in the economic front, and that's credit to President Habibie at that time, that he's actually passing more than 300 legislation, as I mentioned earlier, bankruptcy law, competition law, Bank Indonesia independence, state finance laws, treasury law, banking law. There are so many laws which is actually being passed, and that's become a fundamental for Indonesia. But passing law is actually one thing. We have the Anti-Corruption Commission established during that, and that's become also a momentum for us. For me, immediately as a finance minister 2005, that is really an opening and momentum to build the governance, cleaning up from the corruption, building the capacity of our staff, creating transparency. I don't know about the UK, but is there any in this UK that the Minister of Finance every month going to the public explaining about how much I collect, how much I spend, how much debt I issue every month, not only once a year when you go to the parliament. This is just to show the transparency, accountability become one of the foundation for this democratic, which is also healthy for Indonesia. So yeah, I think the most ingredient is that crisis provide us with a totally change in terms of the way we govern the economy, and also politically synchronized on a more opening democratic system.
Dasuki Shitani now from Mitsui.
Thank you, Minister. I'm from Mitsui. I have one question regarding to the capital relocation. What is the most challenging tasks from the point of view of fiscal policy of Indonesia? Thank you.
The capital what?
Capital relocation to the Kalimantan.
To Kalimantan. Oh, the capital relocation. The new capital city has been built, and why Kalimantan? Well, in the past, the first president said that Indonesia should have the capital in Kalimantan. That's one thing. The second one, from the geographic point of view, it is really in the middle of Indonesia. The third one, as a finance minister, I think I have quite a unique answer for that. I've been actually quite struggle in how we are going to create a new source of growth for especially many islands in Indonesia. If you look at the composition of the revenue and economy, even if the mining is in Papua or in Kalimantan or in Sulawesi, the headquarters of all those corporations is always in Jakarta. So the revenue is really looks like Jakarta based, but actually the activity is on the outer island. And then you cannot really, as much as you try to design the transfer of the government finance to the local government, it will not create this kind of the new source of growth. So I think in a way, not only symbolically, but also in terms of the economic activity, this new capital city in Kalimantan will provide the Kalimantan to grow at the level what they deserve. To be very honest, Kalimantan is always growing very low, while their natural resources has been actually being moved to Java Island, which is more heavily populated. So this is going to be a good, and if I can add you with more perspective, Sumatra, which is like the biggest island on the western side, close to Singapore and Malaysia, we built the toll road north to south. And actually, the amount of capital or spending to build this toll road is much expensive than this new capital. But everybody looking at this new capital. But this toll road is going to change Sumatra quite a lot, because they are the one who also natural resource rich, they quite diversified. Proximity to the Singapore, Malaysia is very logical to have a much more bigger and vibrant economy. So in a way, Indonesia need to have source of growth which is beyond Jakarta or Java, and that's good not only just a rhetoric politically, but also moving and investing in a significant way.
Tara Delaney now from Haleon.
It's a related question to trade, but on the import restrictions side of things, just would be interested in understanding what you see the outlook with regard to the current quota systems, whether there may be opportunity to negotiate them not just on an annual basis, but on a 3 and 5 year basis, and to give more, I suppose, stability to businesses. And then just on the other side of that, just with regard to then investment and how restricting raw material imports might actually impact the outside exporting side of things, just where you feel that might be going?
Well, ideally, if you talk as an economist talking about the global trade and so on, trade is supposed to be a win-win in this case, whether you're talking about export and import. But we also can see that many countries becoming industrial not because of the pure market mechanism. There is always a government support, or in this case policy, that is allowing that first forces. I think the combination is more like how you are going to combine the discipline of the market forces that will allow you to then operate in a more efficient, good governed way, vis-a-vis, as I said earlier, a nudge that needs to actually create more value added. So it is, I think, that kind of experience which also inspire us and see, for example, if you look from Japan, even South Korea, or even China, you can see this is not pure just market mechanism to become an industrial. You always have a certain policy. So yes, from the point of view that it will affect the supply chains in the other destination, but for a big country like Indonesia to be able to have a more value added, becoming more industrial, becoming middle, higher, or even higher income country, I think this is going to be a good for the global economy. Now Indonesia has become a destination of many, and having a middle class Indonesia, we are traveling a lot. We are going to UK, we are going to Europe, and so I think this is just a strategy which we know that it will be totally orthodox and conventional, but sometimes you have to do it, but not in a excessive, so that you are going to totally abandon the market discipline. So a combination between two is still needed. There is a certain discretion, but also market discipline.
I'm afraid we are out of time. We could easily go on another couple of hours, and I'd very much like to, but I know you have a very busy schedule. Sri Mulyani, I can't thank you enough for being here. You've clearly laid the foundations for a very bright future in Indonesia. I mean, the change in Indonesia over the 10 years you've been finance minister has been truly breathtaking, so many congratulations for that. Good luck with the next 6 or 8 months, because it's a very turbulent time, and I'm sure you'll put in place the budget that will enable the new government to have a flying start. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking you.